All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. And I wanted to make this a specific dedicated video that is definitely not as long as a few of the other ones that I've made. But for those of you guys that have managed to somehow, some way listen all the way through my video to where I was talking about the first impressions of Xdefiant, you will kind of know about this, but I wanted to go more in depth specifically on this subject. And I also basically wanted to reiterate, because I know that, and for understandable reasons, I know that the vast majority of my viewers are not going to listen to me commentate for 40 minutes straight or more. Okay, if I'm lucky enough, you might come back and finish a video after you've gone through like the first 10 minutes or so, give or take, right? Especially since the first, I don't know, 7.5 years have basically been 10 to 15 minute long videos at the most, and in some cases even shorter. So anyway, let's get right down to it. So Xdefiant has taken something that was first introduced in Modern Warfare 2019, and they've applied it to their game. Now, as you guys know, that listened in, I don't like that. Okay, now, first of all, Modern Warfare 2019 is a game that took the direction, that took the Call of Duty direction in a different way. They basically took a turn somewhere from where they were usually going. They decided to go in a different direction. Okay, cool. However, the big thing that I wanted to say about this is that Call of Duty Modern Warfare basically changed things up and became very realistic and tactical, right? They were going in that direction, along with safe spaces and a hell of a lot more of a defensive play. Okay. Now, Xdefiant, on the other hand, is an arcade shooter, an arcade arena / hero shooter. Okay, it's not, it's close to classic Call of Duty. And what I mean by classic traditional Call of Duty is everything that started in COD 4 and went all the way to Black Ops 4, if you don't count the advanced movement games. But even with the advanced movement, those games were closer to classic Call of Duty than our most recent iterations of boots on the ground, if you don't count Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. But again, at the same time, Black Ops Cold War did repeat a lot of what Modern Warfare 2019 did. It certainly did, especially since Treyarch didn't really do the entire game themselves. They kind of just took over. But anyway, this is about Xdefiant, not exactly about Call of Duty, but there's always going to be comparisons, so it's always good to kind of put that into the mix, so that way people that are a little bit more familiar with that understand better. But anyway, so obviously, to me personally, it doesn't make sense to take something from a different kind of shooter and implement it into this game, to literally cut and paste it, implement it in this game, and to make it slightly better by obviously having the stats and telling the player exactly what this gun is going to do with the amount of percentage and everything like that with their gun. I mean, yes, that's great, and I certainly appreciate it. However, this game doesn't need to do that, and I feel that it causes a lot of confusion. And I know that I'm not. I'm certainly, and you can tell from this gameplay and the many gameplays to follow as well, that I'm certainly not the first-person shooter player I used to be. Before Xdefiant, I haven't played any first-person shooter in many months. And when I did play some Call of Duty World War II, it was just for a little bit. So it's been quite a while since I've played a first-person shooter like Call of Duty. It's been quite a minute. So I'm not the player that I used to be, and I know that I'm 38 years old, creeping up to 39, and I'm not going to play like I did like 6-7 years ago, right? So, and that's cool, no problem. But at the same time, through my experience, there are things that my experience has taught me that will simply never go away. There are certain things that I guess the term is old habits die hard, I guess, or whatnot. So experience is a main factor. You know, it's kind of like the pros. Whenever you watch the pros play, what do? They always communicate very well, right? That's one of the reasons why. Like, if you get a retired pro player that hasn't touched the sticks in a long time, and they were to come back and play, guess what? They're going to be excellent communicators. You know, it's going to take a while for their gun skill to be there, and their reflexes are not going to be there due to age as well as they were once, but their experience throughout the years that they've already put in, their muscle memory coming back, which is going to be really quick because muscle memory is actually permanent, which is a scientific fact, by the way, both physically and mentally. So the thing is, like, you got to realize that all of this plays into account. So this is why I wanted to chime in on this, despite the fact that I suck now at these kinds of games now. And that is that the the pros and cons system does not belong in this game, and I think I have a better option as opposed to that. And as a matter of fact, Mark Rubin himself, the director of this game, who's doing a fantastic job with this game, also worked on a lot of Call of Duty titles prior to this, and on top of that, he was also the main guy behind Call of Duty Ghosts. Now, Call of Duty Ghosts, I've said this time and time again on the channel, and you can even go back and find videos about it. I've mentioned it again for those of you guys that have been here with me long enough, and shout out to those of you guys that have. And I much appreciate you guys. And whenever you guys come back and comment, I love it. It gives me a warm feeling inside. I have to say that you guys will probably remember me saying this, and I'll say it again here and now. Call of Duty Ghosts was only like a handful of changes away from being even better than Black Ops 2. And Black Ops 2 came out before Call of Duty Ghosts, which was something that Call of Duty Ghosts had to, it was kind of like indirect competition / direct competition. So, and it was really hard to top Black Ops 2 from an overall standpoint. And I understand the changes that they made in terms of the direction they wanted to head in. I understand why they would do it. But at the same time, again, I'll reiterate, Call of Duty Ghosts, if the maps were a little bit better with Call of Duty Ghosts, if the spawns were a little bit better, and a couple of other things here and there, I can't think about it at the top of my head because I just want to stick to the main subject at hand here. It could have been even better than Black Ops 2 with just a handful of changes. Now, one of the things that Call of Duty Ghosts did really well, and that in my opinion was the best create a class system we've seen since obviously the implementation of Pick 10 and the original create a class, which was something that has been around since COD 4, and then they introduced pro perks, but it was still the same kind of create a class, was the create a class that we had in Call of Duty Ghosts. Specifically the perks and how they made the perks work. So there were no pro perks, but every single perk and version of a perk, whatever you want to call it, has had its own name and was put into its own category with its own point value. And you had a limited amount of points, so that way you couldn't just stack all the best perks and put them all in one class, right? There was a balance factor in limiting the amount of perks through points, right? So like for instance, let's say quick draw or stock would be worth 3, or let's say you had something like sit rep, which would be worth 2, and all that kind of stuff. And then you had some smaller tier perks that would make the difference, that would be worth maybe 1 point. It really just depended on how much of an impact it would have on the game, but at the same time would still impact the game nonetheless, right? And it also depended on the play style and stuff like that. But anyway, now this perk system was actually really good, and the attachments were free unless you were to, of course, get a perk that would give you an extra attachment, obviously, but still, attachments were free. You could exchange your lethal and your tactical for a couple of additional points, so you could become a perk man, so to speak, right? Yeah, so it was basically, it was its own create a class system that was unique in its own right, and it's absolutely positively was really good. I don't hear anybody that played Call of Duty Ghosts, even the people that didn't like Call of Duty Ghosts, I don't hear them complaining about the create a class system, right? So, well, what if we were to take that? What if we were to take that concept and apply it to the attachments on this game here? For instance, let me give you an example of what I thought about. We have like 8 to 10 different categories for attachments on weapons in this game. Okay, you got 8 different categories and 10 attachments. Okay, it's like, okay, per category, let's just say we have 3 attachments, a choice of 3 attachments in which you would take. The first tier of that attachment would be worth 1 point. The second tier would be worth 2 points. The third tier would be 3 points. And all the tiers would do would increase, it would basically make your gun better in terms of the category of that weapon. And in terms of whether it's tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3, the only difference would be the percentage value. So in other words, a tier 1 of, like, let's say a quick draw handle, right, would be worth 1 point. A tier 2, which would increase the ADS speed from 10% to 15%, would be worth 2 points. And then the third tier would be 3 points. And you would have a limited amount of points in order to stack stuff up with. So what this does is it gives the player the freedom of from a percentage point value for every single attachment, and keeping it simple. Like, this attachment will do this attachment will do that. It's not like, hey, this attachment will do this, but then all of a sudden it'll make this worth this. It creates a lot of confusion in terms of percentage value and which attachment you want to put on and which combination of attachments. There's just way too many attachments, and they all do way too many different things with different percentage values that is just confusing to anybody, including myself, who is a person who will think about this in depth if they want to. But the thing is, it kind of even shies me away from doing that. It kind of, because it feels like work. And I feel like I have to watch YouTube videos, or I have to wait for Exclusive Ace to make a video, or I have to look at a content creator that I don't normally watch that has already made best class setups videos and just copy and paste what they did. I'd rather create something from my own personal taste and from my own personal wants and needs of a system, and something that doesn't punish me for putting certain attachments on a weapon. I would rather be limited in terms of point value, as opposed to, okay, I'm going to pick this because I want faster ADS, but all of a sudden the gun is going to perform worse in a different way. I'm not a fan of that. I think the gun needs to perform the same way by default, and then any combination of attachments that you use for that gun will improve it in the ways that you chose to improve it by percentage value, without any cons. And what this also does, okay, for any developer that's listening to this, what this also does, it gives the opportunity of the player to use one gun in different ways. Like, you can literally have multiple class setups for one specific gun, and that will play different in every single way. Excuse me. Okay, so you're giving us even more variation and freedom by doing that, what I just said. Now, again, I'm not the end all be all. There are creators out there that are thinking about this, developers out there that are thinking about this left and right, up and down, and they've thought about this stuff. But I'm thinking, well, why can't we take a concept from what was done in Call of Duty Ghosts, a good concept, one of the things that made that was a highlight of that game in terms of something positive that they put in there, and implement that into this? I don't see why we can't do such a thing. There doesn't need to be 70 to 100 different attachments per weapon, because when you put it all together and you do the math, there's like 8 to 10 different categories, and there's like, what, 7 attachments or more per category? That's a lot. You know what I mean? That's easily going to cause confusion, especially since you got pros and cons and you're a confusing player. It's like, okay, what combination of weapons should I use? And on top of that, for the people that do figure out what the best combination of weapons is to use, people are only going to use that combination. Because if they use any other combination, or a combination that's less effective, quote unquote, why would you use a combination that's less effective for that weapon when you can just use that one combination that people out there who's looked deep into it and figured it out did? I mean, seriously. But all because of the pros and cons. If there weren't any cons, I will say this: your current system would be fine if there were no cons. It would still be a little bit confusing because there would be a lot of different things and different percentage values and stuff like that. But if there were no cons and you eliminate the cons, right, and still do what you're doing now, the system would be way much better, and you would have way more combinations, and you would have players figuring out and literally experimenting with different class setups for that gun, different loadouts for that weapon, from their imagination, without having to look at YouTube videos, without having to look at best class setups. I mean, they're still going to do that because it's popular within YouTube one way or the other. But the thing is, they wouldn't be forced to doing that, as opposed to, you know, trying to figure it out or whatever it is, right? So it's like, let's make things a little bit simple and less complicated. If there were no cons, automatically, if you just eliminate the cons, you can keep it the way it is right now. If you eliminate the cons, that would change everything for the better. It would make it simpler. It's like, okay, my gun's gonna be better this way, and you only have to worry about in what way your gun's gonna be better, as opposed to thinking about, oh, wait a minute, I have to think about this twice because look, my gun is gonna be worse in this way. I'm gonna be penalized in this way. Like, the last thing that these I've gotten a good feel and a good vibe from these developers, and I know that the last thing that these developers want to do is make their players feel punished in any way, specifically with, like, let's say skill-based matchmaking, right, or engagement optimization matchmaking, which is not in this game, right? So the thing is, like, they don't want to punish players, you know, for any reason like that. So it's like, then why would you put cons? This game is not based off of realism like Modern Warfare 2019. At least Modern Warfare 2019 had a reason for doing it, right, beyond just gameplay, which, again, gameplay isn't fun anyway, in terms of the pros and cons. So I mean, and the cons are the ones that are keeping it from being fun. Give us nothing but pros. Call of Duty perks gave us nothing but pros. When Call of Duty was in its prime, and when it was classic Call of Duty, traditional arcade Twitch style arena first person shooter style kind of COD, which was in previous iterations before 2019, like, every attachment you would put on your gun, or combination of attachments, would make your gun better. It's simple as that. that's part of the reason why Call of Duty became popular in the first place, because you can customize things to make them better in accordance with your playstyle. If there were pros and cons, if there were cons back in the day when people were putting attachments to Call of Duty, it wouldn't have, the create a class system wouldn't have gotten as big as it did or as popular as it did. Seriously, like, it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be based off of realism. We know that the funnest games out there are ones that are not based off of realism. It's simple as that. Even games that are trying to be realistic aren't realistic. You know, seriously. Like, for instance, take a game even like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, right? There's infinite sprint. Do you know soldiers in real life that can sprint infinitely at full speed, or can quick scope a 50 cal sniper as fast as it does in game, for instance? Hell fucking no. Hell fucking no. Even the strongest man in the world cannot quick scope a 50 cal sniper in real life. No way. None. No. It just isn't happening. So, especially when you put sprinting at that speed and then stopping to fire at that in the blink of an eye that quick. No. Even the ones that are trying to be realistic aren't as realistic. Okay, so let's not beat around the bush. That's just the way it is. So it's like, okay, let's just embrace the fact that this game is not based off of realism, and let's focus on the fun factor. And cons are not fun. So let's focus just on the pros. Like the most realistic thing I could suggest is let's get rid of let's just get rid of the cons, and it would be the minimal amount of work, and just get rid of the cons and just keep everything else as is. And if you want to really go in depth, it's like what I just gave you an example of for what they did with Call of Duty Ghosts would be a great example for this. Like, attachments should make your weapons better. Just limit the amount of attachments that you can get, or limit the amount of points of which attachments. Sometimes less is more, right? Sometimes less is more, and this is one of those examples. So with that being said, I've talked long enough. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think. Does the pros and cons in Xdefiant bother you? Does it hold you back, or does it keep some of the fun from being fun? Do you think that eliminating the cons or changing it up, like for an example that I've just mentioned, would make it even more fun in terms of customizing your class and having different but yet very effective classes of the same gun, as opposed to just being limited to one or maybe two at the most? Let me know down in the comment section. I really want to know. This is important. This is something that matters, in my opinion, and it actually has a chance of change has a chance of happening simply because of the fact that the developers are listening. So if anything, please write something down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.